as we wait for His Excellency Mr. Sonke, I would like to kindly ask Ms. Gloria to take the floor. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. Okay, a little bit more enthusiasm. Good morning, everybody. I should be more enthusiastic to start with. Good morning, all of you. And let me start, first of all, by standing on existing protocol. Excellency, Excellencies, distinguished guests, African Youth Ambassadors, both past and present, and all YPS practitioners in the room, and experts. I think that's what we all are. Allow me to stand on existing protocol and first start by thanking the TANA Secretariat for inviting us all here for this consultation, for inviting the African Union into this process as well. Ms. Letty, you mentioned that this will be leading into the TANA Forum at the end of the year, where you hope to see us, the youth, but I'm going to challenge you and say the hope is to see us and hear from us as well. So just putting it out there. But also to thank GIZ and Trust Africa and all the partners really who have convened us together. In my remarks, I'd prepared like a long remark. I'll try not to get through all of it. But in my remarks, I'll speak both from an institutional perspective, so speaking on behalf of the African Union, but I'll also give some observations, just personal observations or recommendations that I can give having worked on this file for a little while now. So from a peace and security lens, the continental perspective, I think the challenges have been clearly outlined by the previous speakers, the challenges on the continent and the effect that they have on the youth. But as the speaker right before me also said, these challenges do challenge us to be a little bit more innovative in our approach in terms of trying to find solutions and also undertake context-specific interventions that will strengthen our resilience both as youth but also as Africans. But more importantly, I think underscored in all of this is the need for the youth to take their leadership role and for us to be able to encourage that. So when it comes to the African Union, of course, the YPS agenda remains central in the AU's approach. The implementation of the continental framework on youth, peace and security and its 10-year plan has been the core business of the Political Affairs, Peace and Security Department, which I work for, the work of the AU Envoy on Youth, as well as our African Youth Ambassadors in terms of trying to popularize it and also support our member states in implementing it. But additionally, I also wish to underscore the premium, really, that the Peace and Security Council, which is the highest decision-making body at the African Union on all things peace, security, governance, and stability related, the premium that the Peace and Security Council places on the YPS agenda. And I say that specifically to underscore that for the PSC, this is not lip service. And I think this is something we're all familiar with when you work in the YPS field. There's a lot of lip service to the agenda. But the PSC has been steadfast in its commitment, not just pronouncing itself, but also giving clear directives that it regularly follows up in terms of implementation. And the other thing that I also want to underscore when it comes to the PSC is that they do make an effort, a consistent and institutionalized and predictable effort to hear from the youth. We have the open session on youth, peace and security, which takes place every year, but we also have regular engagements. You can speak to Ms. Nakabira, our YAP for East Africa, who was recently with the PSC in Tanzania and speaking directly to the PSC, and our previous IAPs can also speak to their various engagements with the Peace and Security Council. So all this to say that the PSC makes it an effort, a consistent effort to hear from the youth and take into account our perspectives in their decision-making processes. On the other side, I will also speak for the Commission to say that we are, and I think Ms. Letty mentioned this, we are trying to do what we can in terms of mainstreaming the role of youth in mediation, dialogue, peace processes. We are currently in the process of operationalizing the Wise Youth Network. There's a call of applications out there that I think many of us would have seen. But then at the same time, also the IAPS program, I think, which is a way to say we are bringing youth voices, not just as people to be seen, but really to hear from us and in putting our perspectives into these processes. So this is what we are in a nutshell, doing at the continental level, right? But the purpose of this pre-consultation, which I think aligns to what we are also saying at the continental level, is that the crux of the issue in implementing the YPS agenda comes to the national level. That's where our efforts should actually be. And center to all of this is the push for developing and implementing national action plans. The statistics have already been spoken to in terms of the member states that have adopted DRC Nigeria. I think this morning I was speaking to one of the colleagues from the West African region who was actually indicating that in addition to some of the countries that we know, Uganda, Kenya, the Gambia, Cameroon, etc., there are other countries coming on board with the process, Benin, Liberia, etc. So this conversation, the momentum for developing national action plans is building. And I throw that out there to all of us because this is where we put our support behind. But with that said, I still want to anchor our thought process over the next 2 days to say that as part of the 10-year implementation plan for the Continental Framework Youth, Peace and Security, the goal was to have 25% of our member states having adopted or at least started the process of adopting their NAPs by this point that I'm speaking, and 50% having done so by 2029. We're falling a little bit behind, and we need to challenge ourselves over the next 2 days. How do we turn the tide in that direction? So from me now, coming to my small little personal recommendations that I can give. First, I will say that there's an old adage, sometimes you learn from those who went before you. I had the pleasure last week of listening to our African Youth Ambassador for Peace for West Africa speaking to the UN Security Council. And the session for the Security Council was focused on both women and youth. So it was almost the intersection of youth peace and security and women peace and security. And the complementarity, although they're very distinct agendas, there is some level of complementarity and there are lessons we can take from them. This morning when I was reflecting on my remarks, I actually sat through and went through the AU member states that have developed their NAPs on WPS. And I specifically went back to 2010. So that would have been 10 years into implementing the WPS agenda, which is roughly where we are in terms of the youth peace and security agenda. 10 years into implementing the WPS agenda, at least 8 of our member states had developed their national action plans. We are talking 2 on the YPS, which means, again, we are falling a little bit behind. But yet, the blueprint is there. Currently, 36 member states have developed NAPs on WPS, which means that 36 member states with best practices, good recommendation, blueprints on how we can do this process similarly for the YPS agenda. So just putting it out there, there are lessons to be learned and we need to take advantage of them. My second recommendation or observation is that we must carry our member states in this process of NAP development, but even just in terms of the ownership of the YPS resources that we have available if we want to go far. I was in church on Sunday and I was reminded by my pastor that there is that saying, if you want to move fast, you move alone. If you want to move far, you move together. So please let's remember that. And then finally, focus and competitive advantage. We all bring something unique in terms of moving the national action plans process forward. At the African Union, we have a convening power at a political level. Practitioners, CSOs, you have good reach in terms of stakeholders at the national level that we should be engaging. Member states bring the resources, bring the ministries, bring other actors as well. So let us remember our comparative advantage. Let us remember our focus, if our focus is to ensure that our member states develop national action plans, and let us work on that in a complementary and coordinated manner. And with that, I will stop here, and I wish us 2 great days of deliberations. Thank you so much.